Let's go over to Charleroi. The Zebras, quite understandably, have been going attacking in their kind of recruitment strategy. Yusuf Badji, as we already mentioned, he comes in permanently and he started to play a little bit better, or start to find a little bit more at the back end of the last season. So hopefully he can continue that confidence, because you forget he's only still 21 years old, the Senegalese forward. Antoine Bernier, we kind of knew about that one for a while. He's officially joined from Sarang. Ode Dabag comes in, the Palestinian striker from Aruca. Really interested to see what he can bring and see if he is kind of another one of their answers to their striking prayers, the 24-year-old. And then Zan Rogelj comes in from WSG Tirol in Austria. The Slovenian 23-year-old winger has joined for free as well. In terms of outgoings, Ali Golizadze is joining Lech Poznan for around about just under €2 million, maybe a little bit less. So we're going to have a Dino Hotic, Ali Golizade partnership going on in Lech Poznan. So they may actually be a team to watch if you're into a bit of Polish football this season. Because, that's those two players together could be quite fun. Kiyembe, we've already mentioned, going to Genk. Didier Desprez, he's gone to Dudelange in Luxembourg. Norius Petkevicius has gone to Hagelman, and he is actually currently playing right now in the Europa Conference League, and his side are 5-0 down against Skopje, the North Macedonian side. They are also now playing the second leg away. So poor old Hagelman, which I think is based in Kaunas, in Lithuania, they lost their first leg of their game 5-0. So yeah, poor Norris. And then Vaku Bayer, he's gone back to Watford. They've also got Maggiotti's come back from Laval, and then obviously Loic Basel has come back in from Erpem. For these guys, Joris, obviously go to you for this one. I think kind of like with Cercle Bruges, I'm looking at this squad and I'm seeing Adams Organ's name, and I'm kind of thinking he's just not going to be there come the end of the transfer window. I feel like he surely is going to leave. Like, there's all that talk. Maybe even Morioka as well. There's been chat about him leaving. But I think at least they've gone and got the forward in the bag. They've got Badgie. So like striker-wise, I'm not as kind of fearful for them. I guess it's kind of like, it really depends on the formation they want to play in terms of how they're going to use some of these other players, because the only real like out and out fullback you've got is Joris van Kleinput, but even then they play him quite often they play him as a central defender, and we know Mazu does like to have a 3-5 in terms of 3 at the back and then 5 across. So you maybe look at Ken and Kuba, Jackson Chachwai to kind of fill those roles. Bernier, maybe, I don't know if he could really fill that kind of gap as well, but I think they actually look quite good on paper. I'm not saying they're going to be wow and amazing, but I kind of look at the squad and I think it looks reasonably balanced. Am I a bit mad, or have I read them correctly? In your opinion, Joris?
Difficult to say. I guess I'm slightly less optimistic than you, but at the same time, our conclusion might end up being the same. Like I just went over it again, and I just see decency. Like it's something I actually say a lot about Charleroi. Maybe it's a stereotype I have in my head with them. I see decency, nothing too special, except my favorite Sorigan, of course. But yeah, indeed, he might be leaving. But apart from him, nothing special. Decent players though, especially wingers, and in midfield there's some players with I do like their wingers in Kuba, Chachua, and Benza as well. Actually, all very speedy. Actually, in that sense, there's not always the end product, which is again already maybe the question mark for me still. That's why I'm a bit more skeptical who's going to score the goals. We know Badji can be a decent striker at times. Dabach has done reasonably well in Portugal, but it's not that he's backed to 10 plus goals per season either, or even once, I believe. Yeah, that's the main question mark up front. Like last season, I guess, still for me. But yeah, for the rest, the squad is big, it's balanced.
Yeah, I mean, you both highlighted the fact that it's a very balanced squad, and I would absolutely agree with that. I think I'm quite looking forward to seeing more of Odi Daba, see what he can do. I think there's some real potential there. I think he's quite exciting. Zan Rogelsh as well. We know about Felice Mazu. We know what a wily coach he is. He's very good at wringing more out of some players than they actually naturally have in their tanks as well. I think the squad is, as well as being balanced, I think it's perhaps better fitted now with some of those departures to go out and play 3-5-2 in a way that Mazu would want as well, despite the fact that some of those departures are are reasonably big names from a Charleroi perspective. There is some quality there that has gone. But having said that, things need freshened up sometimes, and I don't think Ali Golzade was at his best for a lot of last season anyway. So there's an argument that perhaps they might not miss him as much as you would think. Difficult to know, actually. Again, this is one of those, I think the first 10 games are going to be very telling for us to see maybe how their season will pan out. As I was saying, Felice is very good at, getting a side essentially to kind of overperform. I think if he can do anything close to that with this squad, then they could be a bit of a surprise package in some way. But there's some players there, that I'm looking forward to watching. But interesting, on the Badgie point, largely underwhelming, obviously, last season. Now that the move's been kind of confirmed as permanent, and he's going to be, a regular starter, and well, we think a regular starter probably with Daba, to see what sort of a partnership they can strike up, because that's the sort of thing that could obviously make a whole difference to their season. At the moment, I think, solid playoff 2 place, I would have no hesitation in saying that. The rest of it is all, a question of whether they can get the juices flowing, isn't it?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, yeah, Joris, when you said you look through and it's decent, I think that does kind of just sum them up. Although then you did say there's not much excitement maybe in the squad, but then they've got Herb Coffey and goal, and what more excitement do you need than the cat himself? So
he's a one-man show.
Exactly. But yeah, hopefully a little bit more of an exciting side to watch next season, with a bit more goal scoring would be nice from the Zebras. Mark Beers, Leuven side are next. And yeah, they've been pretty active as well, kind of having to replace certain players that have moved on, but they're definitely missing a couple of profiles that I guess we'll talk about now. In terms of incomings, they brought in Ezekiel Banzuzi from NAC Breda. The central midfield Dutch Congolese, spent just over €1 million apparently on him. Raz Shlomo comes in from Maccabi Netanya. These ones are difficult for me to say. Israeli centre back. Kento Misao comes in from Santa Clara. Japanese international midfielder. Alexander Kalu, obviously from Standard, but injured, so unfortunately might not see much of him. Mandela Cater's back, but might be gone as well. Louis Patrice, after his fantastic season, he has joined Anderlecht. Musa Altamari's gone to Montpellier. João Gamboa, he's gone to Pogoń Szczecin in Poland. Yeah, he was obviously from Estoril, went back to Estoril in January, so just a terrible transfer, kind of bit of business from Leuven, part of their terrible transfer business last season. Dylan Quadrago, he's now out of contract, and then Mario Gonzalez is back to Braga, which means that we're looking at Nathaniel Opoku to score the goals for these guys this season, because there's really not much else apart from Natural and Singi, but he's kind of more of a winger. Sofin Kien, after his ridiculous kind of car crash, he's back, being kind of repatriated into the side. Casper De Noor could be off as well. Looks like he's signed with Millwall. They're just banging out a fee, so looks like they'll be without Casper De Noor. Yeah, I guess, Scott, I'm coming into a season with Leuven just feeling very, very underwhelmed. They might sign Conan and Dree, which obviously people that have listened to this podcast before know that I'm a big Conan and Dree fan. So suddenly if they sign him, maybe I'll be super behind Leuven. But I just don't get kind of the direction they're going in terms of, we know what they need. They need a goal scorer. And yeah, Opoku looked good for a little bit at the back end of last season, but you don't really know. I just don't know. I don't really know what I'm thinking about them in terms of what to expect from them this season. Yeah, I'm struggling. I really am struggling to kind of get my head around Leuven, and I'm hoping that I'll be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I can understand that. I'm a little bit worried for them, and in a way I shouldn't, because I was just talking about a wily coach in Felix Mazu. I think Mark Bryce is a very underrated coach as well. I think he's proven actually that he knows his stuff. And that probably you shouldn't really doubt him. But yeah, the recruitment's kind of been underwhelming, and I just have this, I'm looking at the squad, and I'm not really seeing where the goals are going to come from unless they get spread around kind of quite a lot, which is always a nice thing to be able to do, but also, a bit of a worry as well, because it's an alarm sign that you don't have enough in key offensive areas. Yeah, I mean the squad to me looks a bit light. to be able to kind of compete. And they had such a topsy-turvy year last season as well, with arguably some more offensive power in it than the kind of squad as it looks presently does. I think Gonzalez is actually a very big loss. I think he did very well there, actually, and it's a shame that they kind of couldn't hold on to him, I think, because he had real impact there, and hasn't really been replaced in a way that I think ideally they would like. Having said that, I think when he came in last season, I don't think anyone would have expected him to have quite the impact that he did have. So on the whole, I'm quite worried about Leuven, as we've been saying about a lot of sides kind of chasing their tail and not necessarily being ready a week out, and a lot can happen in a week. Obviously, I would expect some more movement, of course, before the real action kind of kicks off. But yeah, I'm worried for Leuven.
Excited for Banzuzi, that's what I am. And for the rest, yeah, goals indeed. Like you both touched on it already. The big question mark. Because of that, I guess, well, I don't see them ending higher than 10th place, more or less. So lower mid-table. I don't necessarily see them much lower than that either. But I guess I would pinpoint them around 10 or 11th place, something like that, as the status of all teams at the moment. And yeah, we'll also have to see. Interesting one, of course, is Keita. Yeah, most likely he will leave, but they might. But for how much will he leave, and what would they do with the money they get from that as well? Maybe they are also just waiting on that together with what they will get for the Norre. It depends as well, of course. You've already been talking a bit more about rumors with Ndri potentially going in as well. That would be definitely an addition here, but also he's not the most prolific striker either. Well, he's not really a striker anyway, but that's but on the other hand, he would be a really. I don't think I know a better replacement than Ndri for El Tamari. Like they both really like to shoot from everywhere, and that's regardless of the overall quality of the players. I do like both of the players in a way, but that specific trait I don't really like, and I think these are probably the two most. Well, it's most. Clear with both those players in the whole Belgian league, I believe. So that would be a really interesting replacement, I find. And yeah, well, outside of that, Keane still being there, it's still a bit weird. We'll see how that actually evolves, that situation. But I find it weird that he's still there anyway. But that's outside of the rest of the sportive merits and business. Not super excited, just like you guys.
I feel like there's another name we should chuck into that kind of shoot on site, and that's got to be Aboubakari Koita from St. Trude, doesn't it? He used to love it. I remember that was like the first year of the podcast, wasn't it? His shots. Me and Scott praising it, and Joris just being like, he does it every time. It does.
And then he did it against Henk, yes, I remember.
Maybe he listened. No, I love that Ndri Tamari. And I think, as I obviously big fan of Ndri, but I just feel like he's kind of a very similar to Nacho and Singi. You're getting a similar sort of player in terms of can play as a striker, can play as a winger, but like you don't really, you'll use them as a striker in certain situations, but you don't want to be relying on that all the time, and especially not on their own. You want someone with them. So yeah, let's hope they get some business done. And I think I'm not kind of predicting them to get relegated or anything like that, because I believe in Mark Beers and I believe they've got a solid enough squad. It's just Leuven are one of those sides that always want to see a little bit more from each year. I want to see some kind of like ambition and pushing up, and they do talk about it, but I don't really see that they back it up that much. One side that's desperate to move up rather than anywhere else is Anderlecht. Safe to say that Anderlecht fans have been frustrated this summer transfer window so far, and Fredberg and Ream have had to be like, just be patient. We've got our targets. We're pursuing them. One of those that they did get in was Casper Dolberg for a cut price deal. When you consider how much Nice spent on him, it's kind of the transfer in and around the €4 to €5 million mark. Louis Patrice, obviously, we just said from Leuven. Then Maxime Dupet from Toulouse, French goalkeeper. He comes in to replace the outgoing Bart Verbruggen, who's gone to Brighton for around 20 million. Christopher Olsen, his move to Michelin was permanent. Hedrick van Klombrugge, we already said. Timon Vellenreuth has gone permanently to Feyenoord. So, yeah, Duper was pretty much needed. Lira Fayov, he's left to Maccabi Haifa. Islam Samani, there's a load of will he, won't he, will he, won't he. It now looks like he won't. So he is clubless at the moment. Mo Dowda, remember him? He's also clubless. Adrian Treble and Aristotle and Kaka have all left the club as well. this is, I guess, of the kind of the big boys with kind of like in commas or in speech marks, I guess you could say. Joris, this is kind of the one that you're like, this needs work, isn't it? And we all knew it needed work. Like they said they needed work before the season. Like before the season had finished last time, everyone knew this side needed work, but it's still kind of you guys, we've spoken about this already. They're obviously one of the teams because of like the nature of them and how many rumors we see that. Like, I think Dolberg could be a good signing, but it depends if he can stay fit. And then it seems like a place he'd go and rediscover his form. Patrice, we liked what we saw from him from Leuven. It'd be interesting to see how he fits into this side. Maxime Dupe, I mean, it just sounds like they've got a solid, experienced goalkeeper to come in, so I don't think that's too much of an issue. But they're desperate for wingers. Yari Vachon obviously out as well, so he's going to be a massive miss. So at the moment, going into the season, you're looking for internal growth from the likes of Christian Arnstad, maybe seeing a bit more from Angelo, Stroikens, Hannes Delcroix, Zina de Bass. Like, you're looking for kind of these young guys to really push on a level. And well, I don't know, like, I feel like, yeah, we all kind of know that they really need to get some more players in. Sergi Canos has been rumoured, a couple of other wingers have been rumoured, but nothing's really come through the door yet.
Mainly worrying that since Fredberg, after January window, immediately after that had said we had to improvise a bit this time around. In the summer, we will really attack and be ready, and everyone will be there before the training camp starts. In the end, Dolberg and Patrice materialized just about around that time of the training camp, so that they got that going for them. But yeah, there's definitely still a lot of work to do. Apart from them, do believe they need another striker as well. They did have to give them that a bit, or things happened as well. They got a good sum for Verbrugge, and they lost a lot of big salaries, big wages in Van Krombrugge, Trebel, also Nkaka, who didn't feature much with them, but because of that and for that reason actually had quite a big contract for what he had. Refailov also going, they didn't get a sum for it, but at least budgetary wise that should create some for the wage budget. Yeah, they replaced Verbrugge with Dupé. You said a decent replacement. It might be, but on the other hand, it's also the position where they might, one of the strongest positions they had. If they replace that now with Solid, in theory, that could still be a downgrade, so they would be less off on that position. And that's the worry I have a bit for the whole squad, that it feels like all at the moment still slightly less than last season. Of course, indeed, there's youngsters that are getting a bit more experienced and should perform better naturally because of that, and bring them to a higher level because of that. But yeah, I feel like there still needs to be something more. I also feel like that midfield, it's relatively stuffed with names, but it's not super balanced at the moment. Also, of course, Verscharen being out until 24 doesn't help. That could change the outlook from the starting 11 at least a lot, and bring a bit more of that balance already. But with him out, they really lack creativity at the moment, I believe. Like, Dreyer can produce the goals, for example, but he's not necessarily the very creative winger. He has the end product, which is important. That's definitely in the states that Anderlecht isn't at the moment. But the flash, let's say it like that he lacks a bit. Yeah, and yeah, Raman is still there. I don't think they're really counting on him. Struikes, it's a big bet to bet on him as well. Dolberg, I was wrong before. I told you guys that he played 2 full games in the last 2 seasons or something like that. That's not true. It was in the last 2 clubs, which was both last season. So that's why he only played 90 minutes twice, the full game. So of course now he joined relatively early in the window still. I guess, well, maybe for the first weeks it might be still a bit of a struggle, but if he can get through that then maybe he physically will be ready and well prepared. If he doesn't get injured as well, of course, another one of those players which has had his fair share of injury worries. So let's hope that doesn't happen again. All in all, again, many question marks. Yeah, a lot of contracts running out next year as well. So and on that front, there's also a lot of work to do. That's not necessarily for this window, although it might be related, of course.
There's a lot of question marks, I think, isn't there, guys? I worry about the lack of depth to be honest, at the moment. Obviously, there's still time for things to change. Jesper Fredberg's actually been very, very patient at towing the line, which I think is very brave and actually the right thing to do. We know they've been clearing the decks a lot. As Joris was saying, a lot of players on big wages have gone out, and they really have addressed the vast majority of them now, and are now in a position where they're able to kind of sort of build a new team, if you like. So a lot of the hard work is already done in a way. I think the players that have come in, such as they are, I think Dolberg's quality, I think Patrice showed last season he was one of the best defenders in Belgium. And Dupé, although I don't know a lot about him, from what I do understand is that he really does fit the profile of the way that they want to play. So I have no reason to suspect that he won't be a decent signing for them, despite the loss of Bart Verbruggen. But I do worry about the lack of depth. And it's interesting because, Fredberg was also saying recently that their objective for the coming season is playoff one. If they achieve that, then they can revise those objectives. And to be fair, that should be their objective, of course. I mean, this is Anderlecht we're talking about, but looking at that squad at the moment, I don't see a playoff one squad there because of the lack of depth. So I do think they need more if they're going to achieve that. I think longer term, because some of those big earners are out now and some of the financial issues are being balanced and addressed, I think they're leaving themselves much more wiggle room to do more business. So they are a club who could be more active than most in January if need be. But Jesper Fredberg was only saying a couple of days ago that what he's not going to do is go out and buy 10 players and hope that maybe 5 of them come off. He would rather just sign 2 or 3 who had an instant impact, which I completely understand, and is probably the right but highly risky strategy because, at the moment they're relying on the quality that is there performing and staying free of injury as well, which is a big ask, and it comes back to that depth point that worries me. I do feel they need more because what happens if Kasper Dolberg picks up an injury for a while, for example. The weight on his shoulders at the moment is significant and much greater than I think it needs to be. Joris is right. I do think they need another striker of a reasonably proven pedigree, just for depth and competition more than anything else. I think they will do more business before the season kicks off. I don't have any doubt about that at all. But there are a few reasons to be concerned there at the moment.
Yeah, you guys are doubting the class of Benito Raman. I mean, you never know. He does come off the bench and score though. I'm a Benito Raman believer. There's still a player there. He can still do a job, but if he stays. No, I think we all know they've got a lot of work to do. So let's kind of see how they get on, and by the end of August, we'll have a kind of better idea of where they're at in terms of kind of expectations compared to other sides around them.
And just one final point Anderlecht would make is because of the situation with the squad at the moment is I think there's huge pressure on Brian Reimer if the season starts kind of as it is at the moment with that squad, because that first 10, 12 games then become absolutely key. If they don't have a reasonably good start, then I think he would be in trouble come that point. Which would be unfortunate because that's not necessarily his fault as well. But I think he knows that. He said quite early on after he came in that he knows they're going to be expected to be pushed really hard for playoff one. So I think he knows the pressure is really on him.
Yeah, and these first 2 fixtures are against Antwerp in Union, so that's not really. I think it's the reverse order of what I've said here, but still, yeah. It's not looking very good there, but okay. After that, maybe they can pick up, of course, as well. And maybe they can only surprise positively in those games as well.
Yeah, well, that's 2 teams they want to be competing with, isn't it? So it's kind of a good kind of litmus test to see where they're at. The side that finished below them, that I think we're predicting to finish below them again, but by more than one spot. Otherwise, you'd presume that either Anderlecht have had a terrible season or Sint-Truiden have completely defied the odds. Yeah, obviously Sint-Truiden, Torsten Fink is the new man in. Bernd Holleback's obviously gone, and the Bernd Holleback era, it seems to be well and truly over. Lots of players out, a couple of players in, but yeah, we're gonna talk about these guys now. They've brought in a striker from Riga. Torsten Fink was actually in managing Riga for a short period. Spoke to some of the guys who follow Latvian football about Giuselfo Barnes. They weren't that impressed, unfortunately. But they said maybe he could do a job. They're surprised that Fink wanted to bring him over from Riga. So the German Ghanaian striker, he's only 21, so still plenty of time to grow. German Togolese defender Frederick Ananu comes in from Hansa Rostock in the Bundesliga 2. Bruno Godoy, we already said he came in from Ghent. Ryotaro Ito, a kind of attacking midfielder from Albirex Niigata in the J League. Rihito Yamamoto, central midfielder, comes in from Gambo Osaka. And then Ryoya Ogawa from Tokyo FC, who was actually, I think, on loan at Belenense in Portugal, or he was in Portugal. No, it was one of the other teams in Portugal. I can't remember who it was, but it's one of the Portuguese teams. Ryoya Ogawa was there. In terms of outgoing, there's quite a few. Ghanaian central midfielder Mori Konate, contract ended, he's gone to Mechelen. Robert Bauer finally gets his move to the Middle East that he was so desperate for. He moves to Altai. Tony Leisner has gone back to Germany to join Hertha Berlin. Jorge Teixeira has gone to AVS Avs FC. Steve Rida has joined Denza on a permanent deal. Tatsui Ito has gone to Magdeburg on a permanent deal now. Fabinho, who they signed last year, he's gone to Lexois. Daichi Hayashi's gone on loan to Nuremberg. Gianni Bruno's back at Ghent, as we said. Frank Boyer's back at Antwerp, as we said. Taichi Hala has gone back to Alaves. Same with Rocco Leitz, he's gone to Mönchengladbach. And then you look at this squad and you think this team is in for a battle to stay in the league. Shinji Okazaki signed a new contract, so that was definitely a boost. Orke Janssens, quite a funny one, this one actually. Well, funny, probably not if you're a St. Truden fan. He was like, no, contract's done. I'm ready to go. I'm going to explore some new opportunities. And he signed a 3-year contract the other day. He was like, no, I couldn't find anything better, so I'm going to stay. I think the guys at Het Belang Bad Limburg were saying that usually St. Truden are quite like, if you don't want to play here, you can go. And we won't even consider bringing you back. But with Janssens, they were like, well, he's been around for a long time, but also they're probably looking and thinking, yeah, we just kind of need some players here, guys. Like, Thorsten thinks in for a hard season. Daniel Schmidt might be off as well. There's rumours he was linked with a move to Turkey. He's now linked with a move to Club Brugge, like losing the goalkeeper, goal scoring. Who knows where you're going to get that from? The midfield looks inexperienced, I guess we could say, Scott. Bruno Godoy is kind of your recognised defender. They've still got a couple of good players, don't get me wrong, but Eric Bokat's a great player, I think. Daiki Hashioka, really, really good player as well. I feel like Ananu, I'm kind of interested to see, like him, like their kind of fullback defensive area, kind of right and left backs, is actually pretty decent. It's got good depth, it's got some like really interesting players, but then the rest of the squad, you're just kind of like, well, this needs a load of work, because otherwise they are in for a really long season because it's such a small team.
Yeah, I'm pretty nervous for Fink the Bink and his first season in Belgium. You know, looking at that, as you were saying, yeah, there's a lot of work needed there. We kind of flagged up, I think, months before the end of last season that St. Truden were going to be a club to keep an eye on because of the level of surgery that was coming. And it seems to be, it's that deja vu thing of this happens to them every year, actually. There seems to be a coaching change. That in itself is not unusual, but a huge turnover of players, which carries its own risks, because, you know, you rely on it to work. And although we've said in the past that St. Truden have been vulnerable and we have worries, they seem over the last couple of years to have gone on good runs at just the right point. Bernd Hollebach did actually very well there in the whole, you know, it was quite a successful spell, his relatively short spell at the club, I think. He did very well with very little resources. Torsten Fink's coming in and is kind of a clean slate. We don't really know what to expect, but yeah, I mean, lots of reasons to be nervous and worried. A sense that there's probably not enough depth or quality there, to be honest. Gisolfo Barnes is a particularly intriguing one, you know, as Ben was giving us the lowdown on there. That's still a bit of a mystery to us. Obviously, Torsten Fink knows something that we don't, so it'll be interesting to see him regularly, hopefully, if he's a regular starter, see what he can do then. Something to keep an eye on, because I think he is quality and does have quite a big reputation coming with him, and that's Ryotaro Ito. There were a lot of sides looking at him, a lot of sides quite a bit bigger than St. Truden in other leagues as well, were tracking him quite closely. So for St. Truden to kind of get him over the line is a bit of a coup, actually. So if he can produce the goods, then he's going to become a really, really important player for them this year. I just worry about where the goals are going to come from, if I'm honest. And that was a huge issue for them last season, being one of the lowest scorers as well, scoring an average only about 1 goal a game, if that. And that would be a big worry. It was something that was going to need to be addressed this summer, and I'm not sure it has yet. So it could be a long season for Big Keys boys. We'll just need to wait and see if Torsten Fink can work any magic.
3 center backs left, 4 central midfielders left, 3 strikers left. Yeah, and not all of them had a lot of playing time last season, or at least with the midfielders. The Reader was already on loan, but let's make it 3-3-3 then anyway. Yeah, that is worrying, as they were having some lacking of goals at the one end, and at the other end, at the defense, some of these defenders were, so to say, stalwarts already in this central defense, and I don't think that their defense is at the moment strong enough to deal with, have not scoring that many goals either, to avoid a lot of losses in such cases. And yeah, I'm very worried about them. The only thing that makes me a little bit less worried about them is other teams, to be honest. That's really nothing out of Sint-Truiden themselves at the moment as things stand. Of course, a lot of players left, and they didn't bring a few, but not that much yet. So maybe they probably will bring in a few more. But I think a lot of that will, again, one of those teams where a lot will depend on what the business will be after this recording, which makes it difficult to predict. But yeah, the state of this team at the moment, Scott also already mentioned a small squad anyway. If Schmidt would leave as well, Ben already mentioned that. But like, if that would be on top of all the rest, that's basically that you have to change your whole core from in every line, and that's a big ask for any team. So I'm actually starting to get more worried with them while talking about them. I got less when I went through the other teams following, not necessarily the following team, but the next teams that we still need to discuss. They're not ready for the season yet, as things stand. That's the main conclusion for me at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking through them, like, see how they were doing in pre-season, like the teams they were losing to and stuff, and you see that, like, bless him, Alexander Filipov is starting as striker in pre-season games, and you're like, this was a guy that they completely had kind of given up on, like, the last 2 seasons, and now it's like, well, we need him to play. He's not that young either. I think he's like 27, 28, maybe a bit older than that. Yeah. I do find it funny that as you're speaking about, you're getting more and more concerned. I think, there has to be some more work done here, because otherwise it is going to be a really, really long season for them. And you just look at the Hayashi loan to Nuremberg, and that just raised to me so many questions as to, like, what is the plan here, because, like, how much are Nuremberg spending? Like, they have to be paying you for that, for you to make that decision to let him be loaned out to a German second division side. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's just a player that you could really do with if you're thinking about staying in the league. So concerning times for Sint-Truiden fans. Let's move on to, we'll call them Scott's team, Mechelen. Why not? So Scott, you're
fair enough. No, I'm comfortable.
Absolutely.
With that.
Everyone, if this is the first time listening, Scott has a soft spot for Mechelen, so they're kind of his adopted side. So I'll let you do the rundown of this once I've gone through all the transfer moves and my little opinion. So they finally brought in Rafik Belhadi from Lommel, the Belgian Algerian fullback, which looks, should be a really good signing. Modi Kanate, Guinea international. We already spoke about him. He comes in on a free. He's kind of like Volker Janssens. He was like kind of looking elsewhere to see if he could get a better deal, than came back and took the Mechelen one. Dan Foulon joins from Benevento, a left back, and then Leon Lauerbach from Eintracht Braunschweig, 25-year-old German striker, joins for free. Alessio de Cruz, he's gone. Lucas Bieker, he's also gone as well. Big of a starter, obviously, back to Antwerp. Enoch Aguier back to Burnley. Dries Wolters back to Schalke. They wanted him, but he's actually gone to Lommel, which is very, very interesting in terms of where Mechelen are in terms of recruitment and stuff like that. It's kind of the way I see it, Scott. I don't know if you agree. Is I look at this team and I think they could probably finish exactly like they did last year, just above the drop, because I just don't think they've massively improved. Like, I like Kanate. I think he's a great player. Lauerbach, I looked at his numbers. He didn't really do it that well in the second Bundesliga. He was great in the Dritte League in Germany, but then he steps up into the Zweite Bundesliga. He doesn't score as many. So it's then like, well, are we considering the Belgian Pro League to be above the second Bundesliga? Probably, because we've seen players that have done very well there, like a Tim Kleindienst, then struggle in the Pro League. So again, obviously context and everything is important there, but I'm really unsure about that signing and kind of what it says about where they're going. They gave him Rabti a new contract, which I think is a good sign. Rob Scoof's obviously got a new contract, which is a good sign. But I'm not feeling Scott like this is a Mechelen side of the kind of Walter Franken era where you're like, yeah, they're going to mix it a bit with the big boys, punch a couple of the big teams in the mouth. I just see them they're going to have a very similar season, but they're probably good enough to be above the bottom four of the kind of worst teams. Like, they're better than St. Truden because just like looking at, they've actually got a complete squad, but they're not kind of an exciting Mechelen side that we used to.
I remember round about this time last year when we convened to record our pre-season preview, talking reasonably positively about Mechelen because we felt that some of the players that they brought in actually were quite good fits for the club, a lot of whom are still there. Of course, what happened was a lot of those players had no impact whatsoever, and then a bit like Ghent, they had a real nightmare of a season as far as injuries was concerned last year, which obviously had a really negative impact on them. I think looking at the business this summer, I think they've had to be very patient. I know from people I've spoke to that they've actually tried to be very ambitious. They've spoken to some quite big names who they couldn't get over the line. One of whom was Smail Preveljak, of course. You know, we all know about him. Very good player. They weren't able to kind of get that done, unfortunately. He is a player who undoubtedly could have made a big impact and would have been quite a big statement, I think, of Mechelen's general intent, because he still has a huge amount to offer. There is a general feeling, I think, that they probably need a little bit more, I think, if they're going to just push a little bit harder. It's always a dangerous thing to feel like you just have enough. As well. And last season was so underwhelming and disappointing, just generally, you know, that they were kind of lucky not really to get sucked into something really nasty last season. And if some of these signings don't perform to the level that, you know, they can, then there's every possibility that could happen. I think playoff 2 is the objective. I think they should achieve that. I think there's enough quality to kind of secure that. But I think to do that, it's very important that they have a kind of positive start. Again, they were another side who really struggled for any consistency last season. And much like Brian Reimer, who admittedly the pressures are very different when you're coaching Anderlecht to coaching Mechelen, but I think the first 10 games and a positive start are going to be very important for Steven Defour, because I think he still has quite a lot to prove. I think last season was not good. That was not all his fault. A lot of it was out of his hands, obviously, but this is a clean slate. Some new signings have come in. I think he still has a bit to prove, and I think if they don't have that positive start, I think he's going to be under a massive amount of pressure, even if he is you know, a local boy who loves the club and who has been given that benefit of the doubt. But I think there is pressure on him there, and it starts obviously in the coming days, because ahead of the season, the Super Cup at the Bossel against Antwerp is coming up this weekend. And that's his first chance to prove that, you know, they're moving in the right direction. Rafik Belgali, really good signing for them, I think. Tremendous potential. Really looking forward to seeing him at this level. Mori Kanate, I've always been a fan of. I think he's an underrated player. I think he could do a great job there. Dan Foulon, you know, everybody knows kind of quite well. Decent enough signing. And Leon Lauberbach is largely an unknown quantity. I think if he can hit the ground running, then, you know, they could have a decent season, but they're going to need to get more out of Julien Ngoy and players like Jonas Malady, players who came in this time last year and were just largely invisible for whatever reason. We know how important it is for Rob Scoofs, Kieran Marabti and Nicola Storm to play regularly, to stay fit and to perform the way that they can. So yeah, it's a case of wait and see, and I've got my fingers and toes crossed, because as Ben was saying, I have a soft spot for those guys.
Slightly similar to Sint-Truiden, a bit of worry still up front, just who's going to score the goals. Maybe Lauberbach, but yeah, his statistics in the past seasons have not necessarily been promising too much for that. But okay, if he can make other players play better and score, that's also, of course, an underrated role in football. It's difficult to judge that at the moment. Combined with Hermans slowly turning older as well, was arguably their best player of the season last season, and brought them the goods in goals and assists. Also, can store and perform actually well or get better end product than last season and more to what he did the season before is a question mark. But yeah, all in all, again, also similar to Charleroi a bit as well, like quite a decent side. The sparks are question marks. That's at the moment. They have the players that can produce them, but will they be able to? Since they also all had periods where they did not through circumstances. And yeah, the striking position is still the big question mark. But yeah, again, this should be a mid-table side, mid to lower table side. Don't see much more in it either.
Yeah, no, I think it's funny when you think about it. Like this time last year, if you said Gaetan Cook and Nicholas Storm would still be there, would have been like, nah, they'd have been snapped up by now. But this time around, you're kind of like, well, it doesn't really feel like I saw Cook was linked with being the backup at Club Bruges, and then Storm barely heard anything about. Just wanted to pick up on something that Scott said, which is really interesting about them saying that they're going to be ambitious and stuff. And I feel like we kind of seen that, haven't we? Because they've been linked with Seyda Dursan like so many times. And I'm just like, that feels like such an unrealistic striker for them to be going after. And I don't know, it feels kind of like, I don't know, if like you're looking, I don't know, you're going on like Rightmove to find a house, you're searching from like highest to lowest in terms of value. You're missing all the ones at the lowest one that you actually could afford because you're too busy looking at all the expensive houses that you have no chance of getting, but you just keep flogging this like dead horse of this Dursun thing, which he never felt like a realistic prospect for Mechelen to be able to get. Like Prevoljak did kind of, but then like a side like Hertha is going to be more like attractive to someone like him, just because you look at Hertha, you think, well, they're probably one of the favourites to bounce straight back into the Bundesliga. Then he's a Bundesliga player. Like I got that one, but the Dursan one, I'm like, there's got to be some clever recruitment going on to kind of find the striker they're looking for. Maybe that is Lauberbach, but I'm not convinced as of yet.
I think this is interesting because, like, what you're highlighting there, Ben, just reminds me of Mechelen are a club who have sort of resisted any external investment, even though kind of unofficially they're still kind of looking for it. And I think what's at the heart of all of this is there is a level of ambition there that they can't really meet at the moment, understandably, because without new owners or some significant increased investment that goes into the playing side of things, then this side, which has tremendous potential because of its fan base and its history, it's a club that has done things in the game that it needs that, and without that, then it's the thing that probably made Wouter Rankin leave, and that was a sense that I think the club had reached an almost a glass ceiling, which is why he chose to move on. And I think without new owners, which aren't on the horizon, obviously, or that significant new investment, then the club is always going to be in this situation, year on year. So it's a bit of a dilemma, and I think it's one they're going to have to kind of face head on sooner rather than later, because obviously the danger is you get sucked into a relegation battle, and Mechelen have been relegated in the recent past, so they don't want to be in that position again. So what do? Do they go out and get some new investment, which they've resisted? And I understand why, because they're a very successful club rooted very heavily in the city and community there. So I think their approach is right, but I think at the same time there needs to be compromise somewhere to bring some more resources into the club, even if that means they perhaps come and sharp intake of breath, everybody. Multi-club ownership models may be the long-term future for a club of Mechelen's size, dare I say it.
Yeah, as much as there's the cons of it, it just feels that is the way the football world is going. Unfortunately, it's kind of going down that multi-club ownership route, which actually leads on very nicely to the next club in Kortrijk, because they were almost the start of a multi-club ownership deal from a certain group called the Kaminsky Group, who have done a double act in terms of just pretended to buy a club, then everyone realized they didn't have any money, and then this was being called off. So they bought Kortrijk, apparently. Vincent Tan's like, I've seen these guys mug off a Greek team before, you're going to do a press conference. a farcical press conference takes place, so they do a minute of like just nonsense, really. Just yeah, we can't wait to invest in the city and all that, all that like rubbish that no one believes. Take a couple of pictures, they go away, and Vincent Tan's like, right, I want my 17 million euros. Apparently they can't open a Belgian bank account, which everyone starts to realize is absolute nonsense. There are rumors of a fraudulent check being passed around, or fraudulent kind of ideas that they had any money, and in the end Vincent Tan's still there. The club's in an absolute mess, to be honest. Like, it's just, you look at this kind of the transfer business they've done, and it's just an absolute nightmare. Ed Still was eventually brought in as manager because basically, kind of to sum it all up, while this was all going on, everything's been on hold. They've had no one really calling the shots. Watanabe was kind of sold during this period, but they had to kind of wait until there was some clarity. Since the clarity, they brought in Linta Odor from Club Brugge, as we said. Martin Wazinski's come back on loan from Charleroi, and that's it. That's all that's come in. 2 19-year-olds. Outgoings, Tuji Watanabe, as we said, gone to Ghent. Christophe de Haan, we knew he was going. Thought he might hang up his boots, but he's gone to Rosala. Another side who know what it's like to be completely financially mismanaged. Eric Okansi, he's left finally to go to Liège. Kevin van den Dries has gone to Franks Bollans. Maxime de Man, 21 goalkeeper, has gone to Beveren for free. Mohamed Badamosi, Sambu Sissoko have both gone to Kuraliki, which I think is in Slovakia. Can be corrected on that one. Marco Ilic, he's gone as well to Colorado. Rapids permanently, despite being on the bench a lot. A strange one there. Feels like a waste of his talents. Joris Del, he's clubless, 33-year-old goalkeeper. Yona Asabuti is also clubless. Then Nicholas Deer, Stepi Lonka, to shorten his name, Habib Keita, Satoshi Tanaka, Alexei Sic, and Dorian Desuril have all returned to their parent clubs. Which means we get into a situation where Tom Vandenberg's the only recognised goalkeeper in the squad. Although Elian Kusement, who reports on Kortrijk for Het Nieuwsblad, has said that Die Vlaming, one of the youth players, will be the number 3, and they are going to sign a second goalkeeper soon. Faiz Selemani is still on the list, but he's going. And basically, this is just a team of wingers. All they have are wingers. There's 3 central defenders, 1 fullback in Nail Messer 2, and everyone else is basically a winger. Abdelkakar Kadri is still there, but he might be gone. You take him out, and there's just nothing really centrally. Striker-wise, it's down to Felipe Avenatti, Papa Habib Gay, Yasaja Herman potentially. It's just it's just. I don't really know. I feel bad for Ed Still because I don't know about you guys, but Charleroi, I felt it was tricky for him because he didn't have a striker, so it was difficult. He then goes to Erpen, which is in a worse situation, keeps them up but didn't really do a great job. And he's somehow gone from a pretty bad situation at Erpen to an even worse, more diabolical situation in Kortrijk. And I just don't think he could get into a worse situation with his next job than he has in this one, because they are probably, aside from Erpen, who we'll speak about, they basically need players in every single position apart from wingers. Every other position, Joris, don't you think? Like you could literally just, every position you look at, they need something, and they are hot favourites to be in that relegation playoff, and probably could go down. Like if this doesn't change, and even if it does, it's got to change so drastically. You just can't really see it happening the way the club is operating at this moment in time.
Can't agree more. Quickly, correction, Kukarici is in Serbia. Well, quickly, you went on for 5 minutes after that, but nonetheless, better late than never, so that we could do the correction ourselves. But yeah, well, the most interesting part about our transfer business is basically the players that came back in Lamkelzee, Chaluk, Radovanovic. At least these 3, there's some quality in that, but will they still be around by the end of the summer window? That's a big question, and a big question mark. Probably not. And if you take Radovanovic out then as well that makes it 2 center backs. Well, and I guess he could play as a wing back as well, or at least a back, a regular back. But yeah, that's looking really dire. For it's still it's a bit double, I guess. I guess he made a conscious decision, and it was already after the what you would say, like the takeover that wasn't. I guess we can call it now. but where you could feel, I guess, like even we felt it without actually really being around the club, that situation was not really healthy, and if that was actually going through, there were doubts from the beginning. So in that sense, he made a conscious decision. Maybe he was just happy to be able to, after, well, not doing well at Eupen, to also, to be honest, to be able to stay at another club in the first division, in the Pro League. That might be the reasoning. And yeah, well, he's up for a challenge for sure. Yeah, and we'll have to see. Like, there's so many question marks here around the club, but also in this playing squad. I believe there will be actually a lot less players first, and it's not that the squad depth is so much anyway, but that it feels like there could be a lot of changes still. Kadri, well, maybe he might be staying in the end, because I think they're outpricing some clubs at the moment, but that might also, of course, change by the end of the window. So many question marks. Striking position again as well. Many contracts ending in one season as well. Like I touched on it at a few other clubs as well, I believe, and that's an additional longer term worry, if it's not this season yet. Okay, Salamani leaving has been going on for 2 seasons in a row now. Of course, we'll have to see if that materializes, but if it doesn't, can he perform as well? They will need that, and that's also almost the only player where they got some reasonable numbers out of in the attacking front, together with Kadri, of course. But tough battle ahead for them.
Yeah, Joris said it perfectly when he said Ed likes a challenge, because that's what this is. I think anybody looking at Kortrijk from the outside, especially with the whole Kaminsky farce, which was exactly that, farcical, that famous 90-second press conference where they read from a pre-prepared statement and allowed the press, who'd all been invited down to the Gildensporen for the grand unveiling, not being allowed to ask a single question. Really bizarre stuff. They now, they probably epitomise what we were saying earlier about a lot of sides chasing their tail. They more than anybody are now in a race against time, I suppose. Ed still was saying this week that he's confident that they'll be able to make up a lot of lost time, and that they will get a reasonable number of names in to reshape that squad somewhat before the real action starts in a little bit over a week from now. I'm not so sure, because although there's still kind of plenty of time, there's a lot of work required here. There's no doubt about that. He's a very positive guy, Ed, still, and actually quite a talented coach. I think he's very underrated. He's been unfortunate, as Ben was saying, because of circumstances that kind of went against him at previous clubs. So, he likes a challenge, and he's embracing this opportunity, obviously. But there are very few coaches who would have looked at this situation externally and returned any phone calls about kind of coming into the club if that was the case. So he's obviously very, very open-minded and sees a glass half full rather than half empty. But yeah, so many reasons to be worried about them, and they are, as of now, one of the relegation candidates. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, you mentioned it being half full or half empty. I'd say it's actually probably empty. That sounds like nothing is there.
The glass is broken.
Yeah. The glasses probably needs to be sold. It's just no point. Very, very concerned about Kortrijk, but fingers crossed for their fans that they can at least get some players in to be a competitive side this season. It's not as drastically bad as Serang were last season. I think let's be honest about that. None of these teams are like in a badder position as they were, but it's just theirs was such an understandable situation that they just couldn't really find a way out of it. Whereas you feel like these sides they can do more than they are potentially. Let's go to his former side. Sorry, Joris, go for it.
Did you just say badder?
I don't even know. It's been a long recording. The English is starting to disappear. Let's go to Eupen and the Pandas, the German-speaking region of Belgium. So obviously they've gone for a German-speaking manager, Florian Kohfeldt. Interesting one, really interesting that he's decided to come here. One of those guys that when he was at Werder Bremen, he was always really highly thought of as like an up-and-coming coach. I never got it. I always thought he was pretty much quite overrated in his Werder time. Not to say he's a bad coach, just never thought he was anything special in that sense. But then goes to Wolfsburg, doesn't do too badly there. And he did all right at Werder Bremen until they got relegated. So, but I just found it very interesting that he'd come to open of all sides. So I'm really intrigued to see how he's going to get on. But he's got a massive task ahead of him, kind of like Still does. They have brought in Kevin Merwald from Union Berlin. They obviously know each other. Merwald played for Werder Bremen when Kofeld was there, so he's bringing him in. They did bring in a striker in Bartosz Bialek from Wolfsburg on loan, but he's already injured and out until the new year. So that was a waste of time to start the season, especially in a position that they desperately needed. Jan Kral's come back from loan. He was on loan at Jablonek. Outgoings, we've already mentioned Smel Preveljak. He went to Hertha Berlin. Steph Peters is still without a contract since leaving the club. Lorenzo Offerman, he's also gone. One of our favourite signings of the January, just for his name, Davo, he's gone on loan to Deportivo La Coruña. I'm sure there's a better Spanish way of saying his name, but Davo just rolls off the tongue a lot better. Vasseli's gone back to Charleroi. Jedi Gassama's gone back to PSG. One of my favourite players, he didn't really do it though. Mubarak Wakasso's gone back to Shenzhen in China, and then Ibrahim Diakite's gone back to Stade Lems. Although don't discount Gassama or Diakite coming back. Gassama especially because last season we saw it was Teddy Allo. They just brought him back in and gave him a permanent contract. I guess, Scott, looking at this, obviously the Bialek injury just screams striker problem straight away because he was the only recognised striker in the side. If Ndri goes as well, you're looking at just Nuhu as your striker, which that's not going to work as a lone striker. That's not Nuhu's best position. I guess I could say about this team is the only position I'm really confident and comfortable with is the goalkeeping position. I think Leonard Moser is a great keeper. I think he was one of the better keepers last season. I still like Abdul Nuruddin. I'm interested. I feel like he probably needs to leave. He needs to go get some first team football somewhere. Don't know where that would be, but I just feel like I see Moser and I'm like, yeah, okay, they've got the solid goalkeeper, but the rest of the team you're asking a lot of questions, and especially as that defense is very similar to the one that completely fell to pieces against Club Brugge in that game that they could have easily been relegated in at the back end of the season. So another side to be very, very concerned about.
Yep, big worries. I think a relegation battle ahead. There's not enough depth or quality, and I think it's that thing as well. This endless thing that St Truden seem to have cyclically of, that kind of chronic underinvestment is going to catch up with you at some point. And despite the fact, ironically, that Eupen are owned by some very, very wealthy people, they're not spending any money at all, not even the kind of modest amounts really that might make them a reasonably stable Pro League side. So worries all over the place. And when you have a situation like, you bring in a new striker who, is already going to be missing for half the season, then, I think that kind of sums up the situation that Eupen find themselves in to a certain extent. And last season, they were, lucky to stay in the Pro League by the skin of their teeth, really, right at the end as it went to the wire, as we all know. So, lots of red flags at the club. I wouldn't really like to be in Florian Kofeld's shoes at the moment because I think he's got a massive job ahead of him.
Yep, definitely a club to worry about. Also, like Ben mentioned, Moser as a decent keeper. Well, no, as a good keeper, I do think he's decent, but I also feel like, unfortunately, he also is not consistent necessarily, and that could be crucial. Again, also, if they would be in a struggling fight, like the 1 week is really, really excellent, and the other week, yeah, he has some mishaps which cost them. Well, the balance between those will already be very crucial if nothing changes in that position. But is there a bit Lambert rumored to leave? Okay, these rumors are quite old, so I'm not sure. Maybe they all cool down a bit. But he's been decent for them at the back or in center midfield as well, I believe. Yeah, but and if Ndri also goes in, there's already no striker. Well, I can't agree more than like it's difficult to judge them at the moment because this just can't be their full squad at the moment. It's very unbalanced as well. In some places there's a lot of depth. In some other places, like in the striking position specifically, there's literally one player who's out until the 24, I believe already. So that's very worrying. Well, I can't. I whatever they still do, I do not see them not having a lot of struggles and being in a fight to avoid a drop.
Yeah, it feels like if they aren't, it'll be more through luck than anything else, won't it? Because like Scott said, where's the investment coming from as well? Like, it just doesn't seem that they're that interested in bringing players into the squad where they do need to, because otherwise, yeah, they are probably one of them and Kortrijk at the moment are the favourites alongside St Truiden to kind of make up that bottom three. Let's move to the side that have come up, and Scott and I are definitely in this position. We feel like Molenbeek we're not expecting a Molenbeek to do what Westerlo or Union did. It just doesn't feel like they're that strong compared to what those two sides were when they came up. One positive for them definitely is that Vincent Everard is still there. He was linked to Standard Liège and a couple of other jobs, but now they've all been taken, so he's still there. There's lots of confusion off the pitch as to what is going on. John Textor becoming president, fans kicking off, fans saying they're going to protest. I haven't read or seen much about it since then, so let's see what happens at the first game. It could be quite an interesting one. They have been active, though. Obviously, they're across that network of clubs like Botafogo, Lyon, and Crystal Palace. They've brought back Riquelme from Botafogo. It looks like they're going to bring back Jaco Bryan from Crystal Palace as well. Alexis Dessart, he joins permanently, as we've already said. Abner comes in from Farennes, a Spanish-Brazilian left-back, about 27. Guillaume Hubert comes in from Ostend. We all know who he is, the goalkeeper. Pierre Duomo, as we already said, he joins on loan from Antwerp. Shuto Abe comes in from Tokyo FC. So another Japanese central midfielder. It feels like we're going to have a lot of central midfield battles between some Japanese players, which should be quite fun. Numan Kurdic comes in from Novi Passat. He comes back from loan from Novi Passat. And Sada Diallo comes back from Franks Boranz. In terms of outgoings, Jan Vologovsky, he's gone to Astana. Nice move for him. He'll get to play a bit of European football. Ivan Batella's moved to Paris FC. Ibrahim Sanko has moved to Dender. Glenn Klaas has joined Liège. Camilo's gone back to Lyon. Yusuf Shalik, as you already mentioned, to Kortrijk. Jacob Bryan, he is back technically at Palace, but it looks like he's going to come back. Obi Ulare's gone back to Barnsley, but then he's gone to Liège, which could be a good signing for them. Nico Hamelin has gone back to QPR and now is a free agent, I believe. And Olivia Nzi is at SV Kapfenberg. Yeah, hard to kind of work out this team at the moment. I feel like there's still, again, like with some of these other sides, there's movement to be made, but it just, because of all the off-pitch stuff, Joris, I guess, because of all the off-field stuff, it just feels very, very unsettled at Molenbeek. You just don't really know. They're not coming in with momentum from being promoted because of all this disruption. Looking forward to seeing Michael Biron in the Pro League. We've been waiting a while to see Michael Biron in the Pro League. Interested to see if Pierre Duomo can finally settle into a club and play some of his best football. They've got some players we know, obviously, that have got the experience. Jonathan Harris, Alexis Dessart, Kylian Hazard, but he's done his ACL, so he might be out for a while. But just looking at it from an outside looking in, do you not feel like this side is as strong as some of the other teams we've seen come up? But they do have the means to strengthen because of the kind of network that they're in. That they could probably bring in some players quite quickly if they needed to. Whether they're the right players remains to be seen. And you've got to respect that they were promoted last year on merit, but very disrupted pre-season. It just, feels like it sucked any sort of like enthusiasm they've had, and it could be a really, I don't know, I feel like it's not going to be an easy season for Molenbeek, and they could very easily be one of the sides that finds themselves in that bottom four.
Yeah, I think so as well. But yeah, cheekily done a lot of business, mainly because of these loan transfers as well, of course, both in and out. Didn't end up with a large squad at the moment, despite that. In theory, you would say they definitely should be in this relegation struggle and maybe even our favorites to go down again. But then the few teams that we just talked about come into play as well. So I don't see it impossible that they will stay up in the end. But I do see them having to work for that. Not like the Unios and Westerlos of the past few seasons. And Beerschot in their first season back as well. I don't see them doing anything like any of those teams. But they might be fine, but they will have to work for it. It's difficult to judge them. They have some players that have some experience in the Pro League, but yeah, is it good enough? Question mark. Is the squad big enough to handle more injuries like the unfortunate injury for Kylian Hazard? That's another question mark. Yeah, a lot of business to do still, I believe. also Jake O'Brien leaving, or like, well, if he comes back, that would be really good for them, because yeah, he really played a crucial role in that defense. What was a crucial point in their promotion. Yeah, I'm not completely convinced, but eager to see what will happen on the pitch. Off the pitch, I'm not sure. Sir, I'm not so sure, but I'm sure Scott has even more to say about that. So I'll give him that space now.
Well, I think Molenbeek are, I agree with both you guys. I think they're very vulnerable kind of going into the season, and I worry about the lack of depth in that squad. I think they are, like a lot of teams, relying on some key players performing at the top of their game and staying fit. The Teo De Fornes, the Zachariah Eloides, and the Michael Byrons of this world are going to have good seasons if Molenbeek are going to have a decent season. So I think there's a lot of work to do. We know there's been a certain degree of restructuring going on, as Ben was getting at. Former Ostend sporting director Gauthier Ganai has come in to be John Textor sporting director. He's already brought in, of course, two players with a very close Ostend link in Guillaume Hubert and Pierre Duoma from Antwerp, who was on loan, of course, at Ostend as well. There is some interest in another Ostend player, Makdar Gay, as well. Be interesting to see if they can kind of get that over the line. But yeah, there's a lack of depth there that I think, without adding more, I think will cause problems. Joris talking about off the field issues is very interesting, because that's all kind of gone away since Gauthier Ganai's come in. There was a generally effective PR media offensive where Gauthier Ganai made some appearances on some podcasts, some fan podcasts, spoke to the press about coming in and his plans for the summer. So we just need to wait and see. But yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you guys. I think they're very vulnerable. And I think the step up might prove to be too challenging kind of for them. Some of the players who've left as well actually were really, really important for them. I think Vorogovsky was very good. I think Yusuf Chaluk, who we've spoken about a lot over the last couple of years in the pod, or what seems like a lot, he's a very good player. He's obviously gone back to Kortrijk. Looks like he's going to be staying there, because Ed still was saying he wants a really young and dynamic side, and I think we're going to see a lot more of Yusuf Chaluk starting regularly for Kortrijk, because he has that bit of quality that they're struggling for at the moment. So I think Molenbeek's desire to bring him back is probably going to be frustrated. Kind of a difficult choice for Yusuf Chaluk to make. Do you go back to your parent club, who you're contracted to, who are in a difficult situation and potentially a relegation fight, or go back out on loan to a club you were previously on loan to, there's a good chance is going to be in a relegation fight as well. So we'll see if he's chosen wisely in the end. Jake O'Brien's a very big one, did very, very well, is making really big strides in a positive sense in his career development as well. I know an agent who knows his people, his own agent, and they've been, kind of really delighted by the progress he's made there. And I think, it would be a very shrewd move on his part to kind of come back to Molenbeek, should there not be a better offer coming up, because he will be guaranteed regular football at a good level and able to kind of continue that development. And the last thing he needs is for that development to kind of stall. But yeah, I mean, can Gauthier Ganai make the best of that larger network that's available to him there? As Ben was saying, that's going to be key, I think, to Molenbeek's whole season, probably.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm just really interested to see how they adapt to the top flight of Belgian football. Congratulations to our listeners if you have made it through this whole thing, especially if you did it in one go. That's very, very impressive indeed. My brain is finished. I have no idea how to finish any of this. I think we did do a post on the new format, the Challenger Pro League. We will obviously preview as well. We will definitely get to that, because it's going to be a crazy season down there once again. I know we said it last year, but I think Scott, as our man with the Challenger, will probably agree with me. This season's shaping up to be a bit more chaotic and crazy because of the size of the teams down there and the budgets of some of these teams down there. And some of these teams have made some moves that are very, very interesting, and we can't wait to talk about that. But we hope you have enjoyed listening to this third edition, I believe it is, of the Bumper Pro League preview. Season kicks off on the 28th with a Brussels derby, Union against Anderlecht, and then we're back into the full swing of things. So yeah, if you've enjoyed this, definitely subscribe to the podcast on your podcast app of choice so that you can listen to us throughout the season. If you have questions or anything like that, just get in touch with us at any point. We love to answer them during the shows. If you agree with kind of our predictions, let us know. But again, with a caveat, we recorded this on the 20th of July, so things might have changed. So yeah, please bear that in mind. We'll also reveal who we think will finish where just before the season starts, which will obviously be completely wrong because so many sides need to do so much work. But at the moment, that will be our thinking. I think I've pretty much got to everything, guys. Is there anything else you want to add before we wrap this one up?
Yeah, we get so many questions, don't we, guys, about the league format and how it works. Don't worry, everybody. We've got some. There's some very nice videos which explain the league format, which we'll make sure we share in the coming days to coincide with the release of this episode as well, so you're up to date with all of that. I've had an absolute blast, even though it has been a very long session, and I'm ready for the real battle to commence.
Yeah, and I'm sure we will post those formats regularly throughout the season as well. If someone needs a reminder or if the questions keep coming in, we'll be happy to do that. Looking forward to the season, and good luck to everyone involved.
Yes, absolutely. Good luck to everyone involved. And as always, thank you very much for listening. If you did enjoy it, please do leave us a review on your podcast app of choice. Welcome to the 2023-2024 season, and we'll speak to you very soon on another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast.